All right. Hello, and just sent out the message. We should be getting a few more of you guys joining us momentarily. We'll give everybody a moment to log on. Here, Diane. Okay. Since we have 5 people on, so not sure if there's some people that have not introduced themselves or there's people who are using multiple devices. So just make sure you log on. Hope everybody had a chance to do Aztec. Looking at the hours, we had no hours logged. So I want to make sure that we hit that. Okay. And for everyone who's joining us now, I know that last week I promised to give you some resources to help you simplify fractions, the divisibility of numbers. And I'm going to send out that link right now. We're not going to be talking about math today since we left off on math last time. We're going to be jumping into reading. We're going to talk about the effectiveness of arguments. But I did want to finish that up because I promised that from last time. So let's see where all of our participants are. Okay. There we go. Now we're starting to see more people. Okay. Make sure you say hello. Log on to the website. Make sure that you take attendance there. You fill out the attendance form there. Just going to give everybody a chance to log on. Yes, this does take a little bit, and that's okay because we need these numbers for our grant. We need these numbers to show participation. Okay. And I understand that right now, not everybody has a device that's always reliable. People are still stuck at home with kids. That's why we take a little bit of time to do this, right? Another reason why I don't use Zoom because it ends up timing out. And the paid account that I have is from someone else, and I don't want to get into an authority match with them about who should be using it at what time. Hence why I give everyone enough time to log on. Okay, so we should still have at least four more people. We normally average around 10 to 12 students. Let's see how many of you got a message and remind. And I'm sorry if I didn't respond soon enough on remind, um, but I usually do try to make it a good point to be on there. Ended up having a couple of things to take care of today. So let's see how many people actually read this message. 73% of people have read it, so 11 people read it out of 15. So there's still four people that have not read the message. Okay, so we'll go ahead. We'll get started. As we begin working, I will reach out to the students that are not here yet. Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking at a message that was sent about Aztec. Anybody else that joined? Okay, people using a phone. All right. So the first thing we're going to start off with is we're looking at the effectiveness of an argument. The majority of the test for the reading component of it, 60% of it is going to be nonfiction, right? So make sure I got a good angle here. So 60% is going to be nonfiction, right? Otherwise known as informational text, right? The vast majority of it, and I know that every test is going, every version of the high school equivalency is going to be different. So you may have some that are focused on informational text, but maybe not this high of a degree. Maybe the literature portion might be a little lower. But either way, the vast majority is going to be informational text. 40% is going to then be literature, otherwise known as fiction text. So fiction, otherwise known as literature. Okay. And the reason that we're talking about this is because we need to make sure that we understand what kinds of questions we're going to get when we're talking about informational text because they like to pick certain types of questions. And in reality, I think it makes it easier in that it's pretty black and white. So the first thing we're going to start off with is I'm going to send a video on fallacies. Okay. Because if we're talking about an argument, and an argument again is trying to prove a point, doesn't necessarily mean that two people have to have different points. You can have an argument by yourself. You can just state what you believe and defend it. So what we're going to focus on right now are some of the pitfalls in that, right? Some of the fallacies. So I'm going to send a link to a video that's going to show you the most common fallacies when we're talking about a debate or when we're talking about two different subjects, you're trying to prove your point. I'm going to show you the most common ways that people make a mistake with it. We're going to talk about that a little bit so that when we get to looking at the effectiveness of an argument, which most of the things you're going to do in nonfiction are going to be centered around that, that you'll be able to refer back to this, right? Doesn't mean you don't necessarily have to memorize each one, but as long as you understand that these are fallacies, they're not strong arguments, then you'll be able to recognize it in the text when you're reading, and that's going to make your argument stronger, and it'll make you more involved in the reading and more connected to the reading. All right, so I'm going to send that out. Any questions so far? Give me a moment. Okay. Oh, we got some more people on here. So if you just joined, please say hello so that I know that you're here. And also make sure that you log on to the website, fill out the attendance. All right. And I know that some of you guys only have a cell phone. So if you have to bounce around from my video back to this one, do what you got to do. All right. So the video itself is about 8 minutes long. So I'm going to give you guys some time to watch that. Then we'll come back together. We're going to talk about the fallacies. Then we're going to talk about what an effective argument looks like, because there are different levels and how that's going to show up on the test. Then I'm going to have you guys work on some practice questions regarding that. All right. So see you in about 8 minutes. Always want to go with the timer. Hello, Eric. All right. So check out that link, watch the video, and we're going to be coming back here in a moment. But we're going to be coming back in 8 minutes.
took an online course.
I know some of you guys do not have access to the video, so I'm going to send that out again. So for those of you who did have a chance to watch it, I want you to tell me the logical fallacies that you think are going to show up the most on the test, because they're going to use those and you're going to be writing an essay and they're going to use logical fallacies, and you're going to have to either prove it with textual evidence or find a way to disprove it. So please let me know in the live chat what logical fallacies you think will show up on the test. Okay. So again, I still haven't heard of anybody responding to the logical fallacies. If we could do that, I send out a message and remind. Because right now, if you have a question about Aztec, I can definitely shoot you a message. Um, so let's do Aztec Fidelity class. I can help you or have someone reach out to you. Okay, so again, if you're watching this, please let me know the logical fallacies that you found. What's going on here? Okay, so if you're able to see this video, please respond with the fallacy you think is going to come up on the test the most often in the live chat. Okay. Okay. Let's. All right, so let's come back together and discuss the fallacies. Okay, so let's finish up with the video because the video is about 8 minutes long. So if you and it gives you 31 fallacies. So even if you got about half of the fallacies, that's good because now you're understanding the concept of fallacies. Okay. Yeah, If even if you heard 2 minutes of the video, you probably at least got 10, 15 logical fallacies, and that's going to be very helpful for the test. The test is going to have a lot of fallacies. They dedicated almost three standards to the effectiveness of an argument, and you can't talk about an argument without talking about logical fallacies. I'll wait for everybody to get here. Okay. So now I got everybody back. So let me know in the live chat, what is the most common fallacy you think is going to show up on the test? And you don't have to necessarily know it by name, but as long as you recognize it as a fallacy, you can give me the description of what the fallacy is. Go ahead and send me a message of that in the live chat. Okay. Comparing. So trying to say that maybe one person has an argument and or saying that if something in totality is right, then there's not little parts of it that are wrong. Okay. I like that. What other fallacies do we see? So I still haven't heard from Mariana, Diane, Ama, Andre. So I haven't heard from a couple of you guys. Oh, a faulty analogy. I like that. So saying something like, "Hey, all of our best." I remember having this conversation with a teacher when we were in a meeting for Teach Plus, which is an organization that ends up submitting bills to the state legislature that helps us as teachers. And the idea is that if we want to have the best schools, we need to have the best teachers, and we want our best players on the field, right? And they had that analogy, and there were some things about that I didn't necessarily agree with because you can have strong players on the field, but you need a strong coach, you need a strong offensive coordinator, and assistant coaches and trainers and all kinds of other people. So that's a good way to think about the fallacies is looking at how faulty that analogy is, right? That's not necessarily always true. We're going to see a lot of this. And I'm going to send out an assignment here in a moment after we talk about the levels of an argument, where it's going to be asking you to look at how effective an argument is. And the fact that you understand the fallacies as you're reading this, you'll be able to identify the fallacies and help understand what the argument is and whether it's effective. Okay, good. So a lot of good comments there. Okay, so before I start talking about the levels of an argument or evidence that's going to be needed in your argument, any questions about fallacies? And when we start the assignment, I'm going to put the conference call up so that you can join that way. So if anybody has a question. Okay, so Illy doesn't have a question. Not sure if Alma has a question. Diane, Mana, Andre. Before we start talking about the different levels. Okay, so we're not going to talk about the different levels of an argument. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here because this is going to be incredibly important when we're looking at writing a persuasive essay and evaluating textual evidence. Okay, so the highest level of an argument, right, is going to be a justification, right? So the highest level of an argument is going to be justification. Okay. So the highest level where you're going to be justified in what you're doing, justified in your argument, is when you're going to have evidence that can be verified with data. Right. So if you have evidence that can be justified with data, so an example of this is going to be, and I know this is probably going to be an example most of you are going to be familiar with. I might lose one of you, but there was a time in cars where the seatbelt was automatic and it would go over you, and it was an automatic seatbelt, and that was very popular in cars. Well, there came a point that after so many accidents, the manufacturers of those cars started realizing that the seatbelt would not work properly because it was automatic and it could actually like decapitate people, right? So they were making an argument that it was unsafe, and their justification was accident reports, hospital records, anecdotal evidence with talking to people who had those kinds of cars. So they were justified in removing those. And that's why you don't see those automatic seatbelts anymore, because they were incredibly dangerous. So the argument there was that they should be removed. And you have data, right? The accident reports, hospital records, customers coming in. So at the highest level, an argument to be justified needs to have evidence that can be proven, right? Data, examples, okay? Multiple examples, but data is going to be a combination of several different examples. And then you're going to see a lot of this on the test. They're going to give you graphs, they're going to give you charts, they're going to give you um, pictures and interviews and things like that, because they're trying to prove something, right? So that's going to be at the highest level. Okay. Now, here we can also kind of get down to almost like a theory. right? And this means we're going to have some examples, but they're limited. There's going to be limited examples. Okay. So if we think about that same example with the seatbelt, this is at the point where maybe one or two people have been severely injured by the seatbelt. And we're not really sure yet if it's worth recalling all of these cars and not making them with it anymore. And it's dangerous. It's not at the level of a justification, right? It's not your argument isn't justified. Here it's really at the level of like a theory, right? You have some examples people can follow, but there's not enough evidence to show that it's dangerous. Okay. Below that, you're gonna have we have almost no evidence. You're gonna be one-off stories, anecdotes. Okay. And then at this level, what you're going to be using is going to be nothing more than an excuse. Okay. At this point, you have stories that make sense, maybe one example that cannot be proven, right? So this is like at the point where in that same example with the seatbelt, there's somebody saying, hey, well, what if like an accident happens and that seatbelt doesn't want to budge because it's automatic, and then now the person is stuck in a way that hurts them? Well, no one can really make anything of that. It's a one-off story, right? It's not backed up by several examples. You're going to be seeing a lot of this in your nonfiction portion of the test. In fact, I'm going to give you a link here in a moment where you're going to be looking at an argument and you're going to be judging the effectiveness of it, and you're going to be answering 4 questions. Before we move on to that, once again, any questions? Okay. The example that I'm going to give you comes directly from older versions of the high school equivalency test. So they're not going to be examples that I'm getting randomly. These are straight from the high set prep book. And I like it because it allows us a chance to discuss. And you know that if you're doing well, you're doing well with material that is directly from the test itself. No questions, no questions. All right. Um, okay. And if you're unfamiliar with ClassKick, I'm going to put the number up for the conference call. Some of you have used this program before. It's pretty user friendly, but I put the conference call feature up in case you're wondering how to type, how to circle, how to underline, because I do expect to see notes on the text itself. So I'm going to send that out. When it asks you for your name, just type in your name. Okay. You don't need to give me my name or anything else. This identifies you. You don't have to have any kind of complicated login. You just type in your name. We use different programs because some programs are going to be more effective than others. I know some of you guys only have a cell phone. This is compatible with cell phones. So I'll give you guys a minute to go ahead and start on that. And then we're going to jump in and work this out. All right. See the conference call up here. Hello, who just joined? Oh, okay. Did you have some questions on the classic assignment?
So you said that we have to read.
Yes, and I want to see as you're reading too.
Okay.
So if this is your first time on Classic, let me filter it. I should be able to find you. Hello.
Hello, this is Vishma. Wow.
All right. Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, so if you log on, since I
Me,
what's that? What was that?
because I cannot go in the live chat to see anything.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, and so the link that you give us to watch, I cannot.
Oh, okay. You know what? Let me give you.
I don't know the link.
I'm gonna send you the link for the assignment on. I'm gonna send it to you through Remind. And you said this is Psalm, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna send it to your phone, and then you'll have the link there. And I can also email it to you.
Okay.
All right, and let's see here. I'm just trying to set up the email. Okay, the email's gonna take a little bit. For everyone else who just logged on to Classic, I'm gonna be sending that email to you here with the link here in a moment. Awesome. It's just a little slow. I did send it to you to the text message feature on Remind. Okay.
Okay.
Now,
Thank you.
you're very welcome. If you're on Classic, the T, the large capital T, that's if you click on that, that's going to allow you to type. So if you want to type out a question, if you want to type out your notes, you can use that feature. The pencil looking feature is actually going to be a pen, and that allows you to write, highlight, circle, and I encourage that. You can use that to answer the questions. You can also use it to take notes. As I look through, I want to see notes in what you're writing so that I can see you're identifying fallacies, you're identifying reading standards, you're really digesting the text, you're consuming the text. So this is really big in the world of reading right now, is being able to close read, really annotate the text closely.
Okay, I will try.
And what's the best email for you, Miss Am?
Either one.
And I think it should come up as a
Email.
your email.
Yes, email is good too.
Okay, and what's your email?
It's my first name
Okay. All right. So for this
I just
assignment,
opened my Yahoo.
what's that?
I'm sorry.
No, you were
I just
speaking. What was
opened
that?
Yahoo email.
Oh, you said you haven't used your Yahoo email in a while?
I'm sorry.
You said you haven't used your Yahoo email in a while?
No, I use it every day.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. So if you have a question, you can use ClassKick, you can use Remind, you can email me, you can text me. There are a million ways. If you press the little hand in the corner and raise your hand, that allows you to come directly to me, or it shows up on my screen that you have a question, and then I can help you out with that question. So we're going to take, excuse me, we're going to take about 10 minutes, and we're going to work through that. Okay, so Alma, okay, never mind, never mind. Okay. So just for everybody, as I'm going through these, I'm seeing people starting to answer, but I want you to circle, underline, highlight information from the text that talks about fallacies, that helps you answer the question. Really break down the text. I should be seeing everybody write down what the main idea is or highlighting it, because that's going to be the way that we really take the information to heart. Okay. Especially because a lot of the ones that I've checked so far, the answer has not been right. And I think that's because we're just automatically going to picking the answer. So we really need to digest the text. So we need to highlight, underline. Um, I can do some more modeling of that if necessary. Oh my god, yeah, very good job, Ildi. It's like Mariana highlighting, underlining. Okay. And the people who are underlining and highlighting so far are doing well. All right, we're gonna have about 8 more minutes. Hey, I don't see any work. What's going on here?
I don't know why today.
What's that?
I cannot go either. The link that you sent, I cannot go into it.
You gonna go into it? Okay. You know what? If you just Google Class Kick, I can give you the code to join.
Google Classic.
Yeah. Class as in like class in school, and then kick as in like soccer. Kicking.
Okay.
Oh, it shows that you're in here.
I in on the phone and then I cannot do anything. I just did that they call the practice too, and then I want to do something, I cannot. And I try on the desktop and it didn't work.
Yeah, it'll work. It'll work better on your laptop because in the system, it's showing me that you're here.
I on iPad the system. Okay, I try on my iPad.
Okay, good.
Cannot hold it. I don't know.
What's
I
that?
really have. I cannot scroll through the passage.
Yeah, there's only one page, and the passage is basically 2 paragraphs long.
Mm-hmm. Talk about minimum wage
Yes.
for workers.
Minimum wage for workers. Informational text.
So after I read that, I just answer the question.
Correct. So what I would like you to do is as you're reading and you see things that are important, like fallacies, we just learned about those, the main idea, all of that, identify it in the text. And now we've got about 6 minutes. And I'm seeing that everybody's kind of getting caught up with the first question. So when we start, we may have to do a whole mini lesson on that. But that's good because at least we have that. We have plenty of time to cover that before the test. Okay, I see someone's able to get in there. All right. So I'm going to give everyone about 3 minutes and then we're going to come back together and we're going to go over this. So I'm going to model for you how to close read, although I was very happy that I saw more people highlighting and underlining. And we're going to go through each question. All right, we're almost coming back. Okay, so I'm gonna insert a little timer here, and it's going to be a link to another timer. And I just want to look at how long it would take me to close read this passage. Okay, so I put that link on there, and feel free to time me. So what I'm going to do now, and I'm doing this on the master copy of the assignment, I'm going to close read. So I'm going to model for you how we close read. If you go back to the assignment, then you will see that I'm reading it. And if you look on the page, if you look on the assignment, you're going to actually see my notes and the way that I highlight and read. You're going to see it in real time. Okay. So the goal is to see how long it takes for me to read. This is going to be important. And if you want to time yourself, I gave you a link to a timer so you can do it. Because a lot of people get very self conscious when they're testing, trying to manage their time. So, you have an hour left, you don't know how many passages you have, or you have an idea of how many passages you have. If you know how long it takes you to read, you can manage your time better. All right. So let's go ahead and start that.
Okay.
So, minimum wage work for workers. The minimum wage is the lowest salary that a company can legally pay its employees. The federal minimum wage is the lowest allowed in the nation, but many states have set minimum wage higher than the national number. Okay, so what I would do here is I'm going to write out that the main idea, and look, notice how I'm putting the brackets around here. The main idea about this is going to be that the minimum wage is the lowest amount that people can legally be paid. All right. Now, I chose to underline it. If I press the tool next to the pen, I can also highlight. Several states have taken the sensible step of automatically raising their minimum wage to adjust for inflation. Okay, so now we're talking about states raising their minimum wage so that as the cost of living goes up, they can make more money. Sorry, I know I'm kind of scribbling. Will be able to do this on the test as well. Some passages you won't be able to. You have to use a separate sheet of paper, but it's the same concept. I highlighted that because I want to remind myself that states can kind of do their own thing. Okay. This policy ensures that low paid workers are paid a stable, livable income over the long term. Raising the federal minimum wage, however, requires direct action by lawmakers. Okay. So I'm going to put a note here that this can be changed by lawmakers. So I'm going to go to the pen. Change by lawmakers. Okay. So I'm going to say that this is important. Type this out. This is important. So I'm figuring out all the ways that they're changing the main idea here. Ooh. Again. Spelling isn't going to be relevant. The language that you write your notes in is not going to be relevant. In fact, again, if English is not your first language, I recommend putting the notes into your own language. If a word sounds like it's going to be the same in your native tongue, do so. Write it out, spell it out. It's your notes, it's for you. That shows metacognition. Studies have shown that you're going to perform better. As a result, over the past 40 years, the federal minimum wage has not kept pace with the rate of inflation. Now, if I didn't know what inflation was, right, I know as someone who has a job, and I know most of you have had a job in your life, you understand that the minimum wage changes because things become more expensive. So I'd have to use some of my inferencing skills, and I could infer that inflation must mean like as things change, right? Nowadays, full time minimum wage workers earn so little money that many have fallen below the poverty line. Okay, so now we move from the fact that it's supposed to be the least amount that you can pay. And now we're talking about the fact that it's not keeping up with how much things cost, and people are living below the poverty line. Again, I would use my inferencing skills if I didn't understand what the poverty line was. Because basically, all they're saying is that it makes you that they're not paying you enough for you to survive. So essentially, you're going to be poor. So the poverty line, I would underline poverty. In the case of the minimum wage, the federal government should follow the lead of the states. Congress needs to establish automatic wage increases triggered by increases in inflation and changes to the consumer price index. No idea what the consumer price index is, but I know that we're talking about people being able to live outside of poverty, being poor. That is the only way to ensure sustainable earnings for hardworking citizens. So the whole thing here is that the minimum wage is what people can legally be paid at the bare minimum, and that it's not helpful right now, and people are living in poverty, and they need to change it as life becomes more expensive. Lo and behold, this is the next question, right? So the very next question that we're getting deals with the minimum wage, right? Which of the following is the main point of the passage? Almost everybody who I logged into and checked out their responses got this wrong. And that's because they didn't say main idea. But when they say main point, they're really talking about the main idea. What is this passage trying to prove? So I'm going to do a quick little mini lesson here. If you had me in the last class, you're probably familiar. If you have not had me in the last class, this is going to be covering two different reading standards: main idea and theme. So, main idea is what a story is mostly about. All right. Theme is the lesson of the story, right? The point. Every text, everything that is written will have a main idea. This exists for both fiction and nonfiction, otherwise known as informational or literature. It exists for fiction and nonfiction, right? They're not going to use those terms in the text. They're going to call it fiction is literature. So get used to hearing that. Nonfiction is informational. Those are the only two domains in reading. All right. Literature and informational. Both of them have a main idea. Theme is only in fiction. You may disagree with that, but as far as rules are concerned, it's only in fiction. It's only going to be in literature. So if you're reading a story and it's informational, there should not be a message in it, according to the people who make the standards for reading. Lessons, morals can only exist in fiction. So here, they want to know what the main idea is. What is the point, right? What is this mostly about? Okay. And this text is mostly going to be about B. The federal government should automatically raise the minimum wage to match price increases, right? And if you notice in my notes in the beginning, I knew that that it was going to mostly be about the minimum wage. Where I underlined consumer price index, that was letting me know that they're trying to focus on increasing the minimum wage as life gets more expensive. Okay. And if I were to eliminate consumer price index, I already know that as it stands now, minimum wage is putting people into poverty, according to the text, right? So that's the main idea. And a lot of people miss this. And I think they missed it because they didn't understand what they mean by main point. Anytime you see something like main point, what it's mostly about on the test, we're talking about main idea. Anytime they ask you about a lesson or a moral, we're talking about theme. That should only be in fiction or literature. Questions before we move on. Questions. If you have no questions, please let me know in the live chat. Tell me something. Go ahead.
Yes, I have one question. What about topic?
I'm sorry, what was that, sir?
One question. What about topic?
What about topic?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you see topic, that's going to be alluding to main idea. So if they say something like, what was the topic of the text, which you will get some questions like that, they're referring to main idea. Anytime you talk about a lesson or a moral, it's theme. The example I always like to give is if you like the Justice League, Avengers, the superheroes, think about like Batman and think about like the Flash, right? So the main idea of the story of Batman is the same main idea of the story of the Flash, right? They're superheroes who fight crime. Now, that's the main idea. That's what the story is mostly about, them fighting crime. Now, the theme, the lesson of each story is very different, right? In the story of the Flash, he goes back in time and he tries to like stop his mom from dying and things like that. And there's a lot of lessons about the fact that like the past makes you who you are, right? You can't rewrite the past. And in Batman, you see him struggle to try to prove that there's order and justice in the world, right? The the theme or the lesson in Batman is like that there is justice, there is order, right? Which is why his biggest villain is the Joker, who says there's no such thing as justice, there's no such thing as order. Everything in life is a joke, right? You put me in jail, I break out because the cops are corrupt, right? But then Batman says, hey, those guys are going to get fired. We're going to put you back in jail, right? So that's the theme, right? That's the lesson, right? There is justice, there is order in the world. With the Flash, the theme is you can't rewrite the past. You got to accept the way things are. But they both had the main idea. They both had the same topic, right? But the themes are different. So you're going to get a lot of questions about main idea in both fiction and nonfiction, or literature and informational text. You're only going to get questions about theme in literature or fiction text. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Understand.
Good,
Thank
good,
you,
good.
Professor.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. So when we're talking about argument here, is so this is going to become present in the fact that the argument here is the minimum wage is not going up, therefore people live in poverty. Life gets more expensive. Okay. Now there are some things you can use to try to argue this and kind of disprove it, right? You can say the minimum wage is meant for people who have no skills, people that are not willing to work. Why do we need to make it any higher? These people can go back to school, etc. Right? So there's all kinds of fallacies there, right? And also, just because the minimum wage goes up does not necessarily mean that you can afford to live, right? The minimum wage can go up a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have enough money to live somewhere, right? Um, so I know, for example, I've seen like cops try to recruit people from California, San Bernardino. I think they start off at $80,000 a year, but you can't live in San Bernardino for that much money. So just because the minimum wage goes up does not necessarily mean that people aren't going to live in poverty. So as we read, we're thinking about this, right? How effective is that argument, right? That the minimum wage has to go up so that people can survive, right? So that's the argument here. And the questions that we're getting are helping us focus on the topic, and then we're going to dissect it. So let's go to question 2. What is the writer's argument about states that automatically raise their minimum wage? And if we look through, the author's trying to argue that if you don't automatically raise their wages, your people will live in poverty. Your people will be poor. So, those states' wages have not kept pace with the rate of inflation. That makes no sense, right? So, if we use the process of elimination, we wouldn't even go with that because that's the very opposite of what they're trying to argue. In fact, he's trying to say if you do that, people will not have to live in poverty. So, A is not going to work. And let's look at B. People earning more than minimum wage in those states are wealthy. He never said that they're wealthy, right? Or the author. The author never said that they're wealthy. The goal is for them not to be poor, right? And there is a difference between not being poor and being rich. So there's that angle of it. Continuing on. Those states have many workers in poverty. Again, And this is why when we go through each question, and if you notice when I read the text, I took about like 5 minutes, and that's with me giving instruction and everything else. You can read, highlight closely, dissect the text, and do it in less time than I did. And when you do that, you would know that C makes absolutely no sense. We're talking about raising the minimum wage so people don't live in poverty. So A, B, and C pretty much automatically destroy themselves, right? And that's why the main idea is so important. We're not talking about people being rich. We're talking about people not being poor. This is what you're going to school to learn, how to really split hairs, okay? And that's why lawyers get a degree in English, because you learn how to make arguments, you learn how to get down to the real essence of what somebody's saying. He's not talking about people being rich. And that's why number 2 would have to be D. Those states have systems that are better or superior to the federal system of manual increases, right? Now, you may not have a lot of background knowledge on the federal government, but the text did tell us that the federal government does not automatically raise it, right? That it has to be pushed by lawmakers and all kinds of stuff. But we understand that the states that do that, in the author's opinion, in the author's argument, their system is better. Question so far?
No question.
Questions?
No, for now.
Okay. And I even highlighted there, several states have taken the sensible step of automatically raising their minimum wage to adjust for inflation and consumer price increases. Now, I know there's going to be language barriers, and I know there's going to be barriers with what's known as schema or background knowledge. You may not completely understand the way that the government works. I can give you pretty much all American history in like 5 minutes, enough for the test at least. But before doing that, anytime you get to words that are unfamiliar, use your inferencing skills. We know we're talking about the government. We know the government is responsible for taking care of people. That's why we elect them. So if I don't understand inflation and I don't understand consumer price increases, I have to rely on the fact that we're talking about the very least that we pay people, and that later on, he's going to talk about people being poor if we don't pay them enough. So we know that these terms have to deal with money and making sure people are okay. So that's something that's very important to use when we're reading, because we're not going to understand all the vocabulary. There's a couple of tools that we can use, like prefixes, the word, the root before the word, and all of that is fine. But there's going to be a limit to how many roots I can give you, right? In fact, I'll send out a video with the most common roots and prefixes. But the greatest tool you'll have is your ability to infer. So let's move on to number 3. What evidence is given to support the author's argument? Okay. And I know I've been doing a lot of talking, so I want to hear from you guys. What is the author's argument? You can send it to me in the live chat, speak up in the conference call. What is the author's main point, the main idea? Ooh, haven't heard from anybody. Now podcast time, participation time. So live chat or the conference call. Email me, text me, smoke signals, pigeons, messenger pigeons, whatever. What is the author's main point? We actually answered that earlier.
The federal government should automatically raise the minimum wage.
Good. Okay. And what argument does he use to support that? And whoever speaks up, I want you to try to quote the text.
I'm sorry.
I said, and whoever responds, try to quote the text, like use words directly from the text. I'm hearing from some. I've heard from Andre. Have not heard from Ildi, Mariana, Alma,
Mhm.
Diane, Mariana. So I know there's other people here who can participate either through the live chat, phone conference. Okay, good. Heard from Mariana. Okay. And what about the minimum legal wage? What is he saying? We shouldn't have it. We should have it. It's good. It's bad. So I haven't heard from Diana Alma. Okay. Let's see.
I think the one reason about this is the minimum wage workers earn so little money. One support thing about the main idea. And
Yes.
federal wage is not rising with the inflation, with the rate of inflation. I think this.
You hit it right on the head, Andre. That's exactly what the author's trying to prove is the fact that it's not enough for people to live, right? It's not enough for people to live, and it's not keeping up with inflation. Good. And that's exactly what the question is asking us. So now the question is, in particular, what evidence are they using to support this, right? What evidence is the author giving us? Is it A, some states have minimum wages lower than the federal government, the federal minimum wage? Well, that has nothing to do with anything, right? It's not about the fact that some states have it lower. That's not the evidence that he's trying. I keep saying it to he. That's not evidence. That's not a piece of evidence that the author is using, right? They're not saying that some states don't have it. The author is actually calling out the federal government, and the author likes the fact that there are states that automatically raise the minimum wage. Or is it B, the federal government should adjust its minimum wage automatically? Now, that's what the author wants us to do. It's not any kind of evidence. That's what the author wants. That's the main idea. So B could sound like it's the answer, but it's not, because that's what the author's trying to prove, not what evidence they're using to prove it, right? Or would it be D? As a result of inflation, $1 in 1972 was worth more than $5 is worth today. Again, that has nothing to do with anything. This isn't about inflation in the sense that it's a bad thing, right? The author thinks not raising the minimum wage is a bad thing when you don't do it automatically. So the answer would be C. Over the past 40 years, the federal minimum wage has not kept pace with inflation. And that's the evidence that the author is trying to use to say that people are going to be poor and suffer, because over the last 40 years, the minimum wage has not changed. Questions about that?
No.
Good, good. I'm glad I'm hearing. Okay, I'm hearing from Mariana. Okay, so remember, it's not that the cost of living is different in each state. It's about the fact that the author believes that those states that are automatically raising the minimum wage are helping their people. And the states and the federal government is not doing that, and it's hurting. It's hurting the people. Okay. And number 4, which of the following is most likely to be one of the author's assumptions? Okay. So now they're asking us to think the way the author does. This is why it's so important that we highlight and we underline and circle what the author is trying to say and how they're trying to prove it. When it becomes fiction, this is going to be a lot harder because it's not going to be black and white. In fiction, it's going to be very weird because it's going to be philosophy and how people feel, and that's not so easy to digest. But In nonfiction, the majority of this test for reading is going to be nonfiction. We have to look at the black and white ideas because most of nonfiction is going to be black and white. And the author's argument is if you don't raise it, people are poor. The states that raise it, their people are better off. The federal government needs to copy the states and raise it automatically. So let's go through and notice that I always get rid of all the answers that I know don't work. So let's look at A. And we're trying to think about this like the author does, right? They're teaching us to do this, right? This is what being educated is all about. You can look at the decisions you can make decisions for people. You can see how they think about things and make policies and stuff like that. So let's look at A. Employees under the age of 18 might be paid less than the minimum wage. That has nothing, again, to do with anything. Right? Yeah, nothing to do with anything. And you're going to see a lot of that on the test, right? And this is why we take our time, we close read, right? So let's look at C. Employees earning the federal minimum wage cannot support themselves. What's that?
Yeah, I think this is C.
Okay, let's see. So,
This is correct answer. Yeah.
employees earning the federal minimum wage cannot support themselves and their families. That almost sounds right. Yeah, that could be it. Let's look at D. The past 40 years have experienced significantly higher inflation than was expected. Well, this isn't the whole thing about inflation. So you see how there's some truth in there, but again, it's a fallacy. Remember, we talked about even though the end result of something could be right, doesn't mean all the pieces are. And just because the end result of something is wrong, doesn't mean all the pieces are wrong, right? That's a fallacy. So inflation is important to the story, but that's not what the whole thing is about, right? It's a supporting detail. So we're going to get rid of D. Let's look at B. Ensuring sustainable incomes for hardworking citizens is a responsibility of lawmakers. So we have to look at both B and C and think about which one is closer to the author's opinion than the other. So in the live chat, conference call, emails, again, smoke signals, whatever method you have to use, let me know what you think number 4 is. Is it going to be B or C? A and D are ridiculous. So it's between B and C.
Yeah, I think C because the wage incomes for state, it's not federal government, it's not responsible for lawmakers. I think I think C is more inside the context of the main idea. My opinion.
Okay, and it looks like a few people agree with you. And we are between B and C, and some people have chosen B. Okay, so I love the fact that Andre gave a justification. He says that it's within the context of the author's opinion. So everybody responding in the live chat, let me know why you think it's B or C. And thank you, Andre, for sharing. That's exactly what I want. So if you want to share to the conference call, you can, but we have to start justifying our responses. And I love the fact that Andre did that. So he's saying this is in context of the idea of people being poor because they're not earning the minimum wage is not paying them enough to really survive. He thinks that's in line with the author saying. So I want to hear from Ildi, Ama, Mariana, Diane, Sam. Let me know why you believe your answer is a right answer with evidence from the text. You can try to copy. I think you can screenshot the text, but you can just kind of summarize it in your own words. It's the same thing you would do for the test, for any kind of text dependent question. Any question that can only be answered with the text, they're going to expect you to quote the text. So even if you just give me a few words out of the text, you're getting into that practice, right? You're letting me know that you could come up with what the author's trying to say and use evidence from the text to support why the author would do that. And as we're doing that, I'll just keep reminding everybody. So again, and I know everybody here's had a job, but this is the power of an education, right? There's going to be times, especially in employment, if you have to let somebody go or promote somebody, you really have to take what they've done on paper, their track record, and look at whether they would be successful, whether they would struggle, right? And you're going to go back to that, right? Are they here on time? Do they attend these meetings? Are they trying to get promoted? Can we prove that through training? Blah, 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 blah. And the opposite, right? Never shows up on time, never shows up to training, doesn't deserve to be promoted, all of those things, right? Okay, because according to the author, minimum wage is little money. Okay, so like a lot of people are agreeing with Andre. Still haven't heard from Alma and Sam.
I cannot explain.
You can give it a shot. It's all right. We're family. Give it a shot. Because on the test, they're going to ask you to do that as well. You either get two-part questions or it'll be a short response. Ooh, okay. Because the government is the one making decisions, and following the states who pay more will be the only way to ensure sustainable earnings. Okay. No, that is great. That is great. Only thing I would throw in there is according to the text, so we know where you got it from. Okay, so let's look at it. So for number 4, you go back to class gig. The answer would be B, right? The author states that the lawmakers must ensure sustainability or stability for workers, but does not justify why they must do so. Right? The author assumes that this is part of the job lawmakers should do. Right? So here, the author just believes that they should be making the minimum wage increase automatically because it's their job to take care of their people. All right. So that's why, even though B and C are very close, it would be B, right? That it's sustainable income for hardworking citizens, right? And it's the job of lawmakers. And if we look back at the text, we're going to see that. Right?
Okay, I see it.
So, and I actually underlined the last part, direct action by lawmakers. So let's look at that. There's a couple others, at least 2 sentences. And I'm going to read actually a little bit before that. Several states have taken the sensible step of automatically raising their minimum wage to adjust for inflation and consumer price increases. This policy ensures that low paid workers are paid a stable, livable income over the long term. Raising the federal minimum wage, however, requires direct action by lawmakers. Right? So here is where we know that the author believes that it's important to do so, right, as consumer prices go up, and that the only way that happens is by lawmakers. Right? And that's where we see that in B, right? It's a responsibility of lawmakers. Questions on why it would be B? Feel free to speak up again by any of the means, text, email.
No question.
Good. Very nice, man. Yep, I agree. Okay. Now, um, I understand that we went over by 22 minutes. I love doing this. I love interacting with you guys, but I also want to respect people's times. I know that we were logged on to Aztec. We were working in there. If you haven't, please, once the class ends, if you have any issues, let me know. We do want to have time in there. We know the program is in a different phase. It's online and we're transitioning to that, but we do want to make sure we get time on Aztec. And I also want to put that out there before we go off. Um, thank you for joining us, Odi. That again, a 40% on an assignment in Aztec is passing for the actual test. Aztec is harder than the actual test. So if you're on there, you're getting a 60%, 50%. Our internal data has shown that when you take the actual test, you will do better. Oh, awesome. Okay, so if you would like to continue on with another passage, I can upload that and we can work on another example. If not, we can end today, and then if you feel like we're clear, and tomorrow we'll move on into math. So please let me know if you feel confident moving or ending for today and then moving on to math tomorrow, or if you would like another passage and get another shot at this.
If you could, I would like another passage,
Absolutely.
but do the class, yeah.
No, that's okay. Even if one or two people do it, I'm all about passing. I'm all about passing.
And
Yep. So if other people can't stay, they can log off and we can keep it moving.
okay, thank you much. You have a good day.
What's that?
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, I'll stay. Okay. So we have at least one person and okay, so a couple of people. All right. So I'm going to add this. Okay. See you tomorrow. I'm going to add this passage onto the same assignment so you don't have to go anywhere. It's going to take me a moment to convert it over to PDF. I like to do things as we roll. So as you were working on this and I started seeing people participating, I realized you wanted to add another passage. So I'm going to add that in there. All right. So it's going to take me one moment to do so. Again, if you have to go, I completely understand.
Okay, so I just go in the same link and then.
Yeah, I'm gonna upload the question here in one moment. Okay. So just so I know who's here, so I know who's participating. So if you're here, please let me know through email, all the different ways you can get a hold of me, so I know how big my class size is. So I know Sam, you're here. I know Alma asked for another assignment. And I know Ildi had to go. So I just wanted to know who is still with us. Let me know, please. Okay, so I'm sorry.
So-
Alma has to go.
So this one we're gonna continue tomorrow.
What's that?
This assignment we continue with tomorrow.
No, I will send out the assignment now, and then tomorrow we're gonna move on to math.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So Sam, okay. Is there anybody else on the conference call besides Sam?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so Andre's here. Okay, and on the live chat, I know. Okay, so Mariana had to go. Alma had to go. Ildi had to go. Andre's here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to be uploading that here in a moment and we will continue. So you'll see it popping up here in a moment. So it'll just be a brand new page. We'll do the same thing, 10 minutes to read it, and then we're going to go over it together. So I'm going to start uploading it now. And then as soon as you see it, that link on the first page that has a timer, you can use your phone or whatever other time telling device you have. But it's really important that we see how long it takes us to read. And that should be coming now in 3, 2, 1. It should be there now. All right, so if you refresh it, that text should be there.
Okay, Mr. Mora.
What's that?
I need to leave the class.
Oh, okay, yeah, no problem.
My time, okay?
Yeah, no problem. See you tomorrow. What's that?
Tomorrow at 9, okay?
Tomorrow at 9.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for class, mister.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. All right, Sam. So it's just you and me. So I'll give you about 10 minutes, and that should be enough time for you to read the passage and answer the questions. Hello, Sam?
Hello.
Yeah. So it's like it's just you and me. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes to read the story, the passage, and answer the questions. All right, so Alma, and I'm sorry, Sam, if you're here, please log back on to the conference call. Oh, okay.